Welcome to the Business Success Secrets Summit. I am here with Erin Elizabeth, and I am just so excited because I've been doing a ton of research on wellness experts, and Erin's information kept coming up, and I'm just reached out and so excited to have you here, Erin. You are a very passionate activist when it comes to health and wellness and working in the arena for, I would not even guess, a quarter of a century, like you say, because you don't look a day over 30. And I'm sure you're gonna you're gonna share with us how you've been able to keep yourself so young and so amazing. And then you have a website called Health Nut News, which has just been booming. And you started it 3 years ago, and is one of the top health websites out there. So you're also going to share with us about that. So if you could just give us a little background of who you are, why you're up to what you're up to, and all the amazing things you're doing to make a difference.
Sure, Jasper. No, I'd be happy to. So yeah, I began the site really planning to go into more recipes, kitchens. I don't want to say diets, but just changes with food and explain what I ate, but it's really evolved to so much more. So, but yeah, it began with Health Nut News just because I felt like I was already sharing so much information on social media with people that I really needed to turn it into a site. And prior to that, I had run raw vegan retreats for a number of years here on the East Coast of Florida, and those were really fun but very taxing on my time. I didn't know that the website could be just as taxing, even though I didn't have to run these physical events. It can be a lot of work, and it did grow a little more quickly than I'd anticipated. And with the retreats, I had speakers from around the world, mostly couples, a husband and wife, who would come in different teams. A lot of famous raw foodists, because it was more raw retreat, and it was delightful, and chefs from around the world. So that was a lot of fun. And then, but it became so much work, especially when we started traveling more and going back to where we're both. Joe and I, Dr. McCall and I, are both from Chicago, so we would be up there part of the year, and it was difficult to run those. So finally, I decided just over 3 years ago that I needed to begin my own site. So then now this has come to fruition, I guess. So
beautiful.
So to speak.
So, as I mentioned before, the reversing of the biological age and looking not like you're a day over 30, but you've had your own weight loss journey. And can you share with us how you've overcome what you've overcame, plus how you've kept it off?
Sure. Yes, no problem. Yeah, it started, I would say, even in high school, where I probably talked about this much, and I had a friend before I went back to a high school reunion asking me if I was still not suffering, I don't want to put it that way, but was I still struggling with extra weight? And so I thought, well, no, not now, when I went back for my high school reunion. But I would yo-yo within a year or so, just about every time, where I would try to get thin, but then gain it right back, try to get thin and gain it right back. And for me, having had autoimmune challenges and having been bitten by a tick at an 8th grade graduation camping party, we think probably I had Lyme disease since then. I had autoimmune challenges, so when I had extra fat on my body, that fat for me, unlike some people, because I'm ectomorph, I mean, I'm 5'10", very lanky, it would not really store as muscle, it would store as fat. So I was over 50% body fat just 4 years ago, actually. And so the fat that I had, the extra fat on my body would be pretty toxic. So that's why I wanted to get rid of some of that fat. And then I made the mistake of doing one surgery in my life, which I'm very open about, with getting saline implants. And so I got breast implants. And so I finally, I guess in 2012, I got the implants out, but that was a 5.5 hour surgery under general anesthesia, and was very taxing on my body and left me pretty sick. Even though we got the implants out, didn't put new ones in, and the doctor was amazing in Atlanta, put me back together again really nicely. But unfortunately, then I was even weaker after that, and even heavier, and I continued to gain and gain. So what I did at that point was I was doing high intensity, and I would go in and struggle through these high intensity workouts and doing more and more cardio, when suddenly it dawned on me that even doing the interval training, which just doesn't really, some people thrive on it. For me, I don't like doing that as much. but where you're going to do kind of bursts of cardio and then slow down, then do a burst again, like animals might do in nature. But I switched, as I explained in my book which I give away, up to doing yoga, to doing Pilates, and to doing different exercises which would bring my cortisol levels down. Because not long after right before or after the implants, I went to an endocrinologist and they thought that I had Addison's disease like JFK had. They did an ATCH test on me and they thought for sure my cortisol levels were so high. I was probably, being as teeny as I am, but my waist and stomach were so big, people would literally ask me if I was pregnant, and I was almost a 40-inch waist. But I'm so small, so at being very tall, lanky, it looked absolutely ridiculous. But that was that extra, leaky gut, the cortisol, high cortisol. And once I changed my lifestyle and slowed everything down, including slowing down my eating, slowing down my workout routines, doing the best, as I'm still trying to slow down my life, I saw major improvements. And actually, I don't ever recommend anybody do it so quickly, but I probably went from, I was like a size 14, which for some people can be awesome, but for me, being such an ectomorph and just not being able to build muscle very well and being very lanky, that extra weight was all fat on me and looked very unbalanced. I went from a 14, 50+% body fat to a size 6, probably 20, I don't really measure, 20-something% body fat. I even did DEXA scans before and after that measure bone density and fat, like with it's some radiation, but I wanted to know exactly what my numbers were, and I've kept that off over 4 years now. So
Wow,
for
good for you.
that 20-year high school reunion, I went to next year's 25 high school reunion, was I went and and had the weight off. That was kind of my goal, but now I've kept it off for 4 years.
Good for you. And with you had mentioned Lyme disease and how you don't like to use the word struggle, but how you overcame and how you overcame that. You mentioned it a little bit, but could you add more to that?
Sure, yes. So I think now looking back and having talked to we're very fortunate to have these Lyme literate medical doctors who I know at my fingertips, and we pretty much have determined that, I had a positive Western blot test, so we know that I am, or was, we haven't retested, positive for Lyme, and I did that test so I was in denial at first. I guess that was right around the beginning of the year of 2013, so 4 years ago, and so just over 4 years ago. And then once I did the protocol that I explained in the book is when I lost the weight and kept it off and everything. So we determined that I probably had had Lyme since about just after 8th grade, 13, wow, summer before I turned 14, and had a tick on me for 2 days where we're in, your kids in elementary school really don't worry about it with the jeans on, and it was a little chilly, so just for 2 days we didn't take showers and we go back home, and I saw the tick after probably being on me for 2 days, and then I would have what they thought was growing pains because I'm pretty tall, and they said, oh, you must have growing pains, but I was going to orthopedists and they were trying to figure out what was wrong. Probably even went to a rheumatologist too, I believe, but we could never figure it out, and but I didn't have those prior to that. So with the Lyme, I was in denial at first when I got the positive blood test, but then went through talking with a number of Lyme doctors that convinced me, yeah, this is a positive. Lots of people aren't as fortunate in ways because they get a negative, but they really are positive. So because at least 30%. On ELISA, it's much higher, but I did the Western blot test. So then I began the protocol and changes. Now, a year ago, I was in an accident in Nashville. I was just traveling and I had 3 fractures, torn labrum, a broken foot. I have a lot of injuries that I'm still overcoming, and I fully admit to my readers that I probably went a step or 2 back because I took a few steps backwards, and I've learned from having traveled to see some of the Lyme doctors and even stay at the clinics several years ago that whether it's the doctor or the people who work there who have overcome Lyme say it's kind of a lifelong maintenance. Just like anything, I think so many people think they can do a diet and that then immediately afterward they've lost the weight, they're good, they can go back to normal. It doesn't work that way. And it's the same way with like a challenging autoimmune disease like Lyme, which I had for so long, close to 30 years on diet. I think just around 30 years at the time I found out undiagnosed. Yeah.
And then to get your body to switch and to respond to the new way of being. I mean, that takes time,
Oh yeah,
obviously.
yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. So,
yeah,
yeah. So I just it's just a day to day. Just take day to day at a time. And like we were talking about, having had the hurricane damage, and we've had to move 3 times since January, and then we'll move a 4th time back in eventually once they. We've had rain here for weeks, so which is unusual in sunny Florida on the beach. So once they get enough of a time period to build a new roof and then to take out the collapsed ceiling, you move back in. But you just have to learn to deal with those things and know that it could be much worse. And
right. Well, can you share with people where you're at right now? Because this is like the one room that you can be in because of the hurricanes that came through.
right,
And
oh yeah. So this, yeah, it's just a 2 bedroom. It's really an old fixer upper. It's nothing fancy. So we've got the
right,
Atlantic
right.
Ocean
Oh,
out here, which is stunning even in the cloudy weather, and the rain is at least stopped for now. So it does,
beautiful.
yeah, just a little bitty room, but it does go all the way around, and so that's very nice. And we're on the East Coast, Florida, where the surf isn't huge today, but people don't realize that Florida has surfing, and that we are, that it's a beautiful place. So once it is fixed, hopefully in the next month, and we get moved back in, my hopes are to, relax, do some body surfing, take some breaks from work. And I'm learning to do that with the, not even having had a site 3.5 years ago. I think it's been less than 3.5 years, just to learn to cope with having had it built that it grew so quickly, a little more quickly than we expected,
Right.
and delegate things out to other people, which really helps. I have a full-time assistant and a small staff that help now, because I just didn't expect it to grow like it did. So
Well,
yeah,
that's exciting. So, what
yeah.
did you do before having a website and having it? I mean, because you obviously did something that allowed you to learn how to just have this website that just booms.
Yeah, well, besides the retreats, which I did do the retreats for a number of years, and we'd have about 60 people at each, I'd say about 60 people at each retreat. So only one didn't have that many. So, and we'd not only have some of the leaders in the health world come to speak at those retreats, and that's actually how I met Joe, Dr. Mercola, were through the retreats, but some of the participants who would come, one of the heads who runs Hippocrates, it's a health institute in South Florida, came to my retreat before then. He got the job there and has advanced. So we'd have leaders that would even come just to attend the retreat. So we had it on the beach, and so we would have I tried at first to do a 10-day retreat. I thought it would be like a longer group, a longer amount of time with a smaller amount of people, but I found that people really liked the idea of a lot more people, and we could fit them in the retreat house, fit 60, 65 max for our events, and they kind of liked come in on a Friday evening, and through Sunday evening, and then they would get a flight, get home. Some people had to leave a little earlier than others, and we would do everything from scratch. We brought in chefs who literally we would bring. I get all the food, the produce, everything from complete scratch. Go to gardens, get all the stuff. So we would prepare everything from scratch, which was pretty insane to try to do for 60 plus people for a weekend for an event. And we charged I don't do them anymore, and probably never will again. $199 for the weekend on the ocean, which was probably why we filled each retreat, because it was so ridiculously affordable. And even the first people signed up got to stay in the seven bedroom place on the not. This is a small place, but this other house I was renting for free. So the first dozen people or so. So it was definitely a great situation, but I think it took a lot out of me and probably burned my adrenals as well, because that was definitely a lot of work. And then I think how I learned, because I always say I'm a journalist, not a scientist, but how I, besides having friends that were in that health world and having experts at those retreats and learning so much from them myself, attending the retreats and running the retreats, also then for the first, because Joe and I have been together 8 years, so 5 of the 8 years I wasn't running Health Nut News, and would help him, but also go to a lot of conferences with him, whether they're anti-aging conferences, different parts of the country, attended conferences in different parts of the world. And then even before he and I met, I done my certification at, which I never tell people, but at Living Foods Institute, Optimum Health Institute in Austin, which is like 100 hours at Living Foods. Institute in Atlanta, and then Joe and I together did the Hippocrates Health Institute program, which is more on like a whole foods, more raw plant-based philosophy, but we incorporate that as well with where we've gone to. I mean, we've gone to many anti-aging conferences where they would not be so much plant-based whatsoever. But yeah, there's between keto, paleo, and vegan, vegetarian, there's so many different views on diet, but I have an open mind about that. So yeah, so just attended a lot of conferences, and then now we've spoken just this year. I mean, a couple months ago, we spoke at 2 conferences to 6,500 doctors in 2 days. So
Wow.
when I spoke at Parker University's event in Las Vegas, it was sold out with, I think, 3,400, and they weren't students, they were graduate doctors. So, and then CalJam. And so that was great because I'm speaking, but then I'm able to see the other speakers as well, many experts and scientists and doctors from around the world. I'm usually one of the few non-doctors or scientists, so I'm really fortunate they even include me. And actually, Joe didn't go to CalJam this year. He wasn't crazy enough like me to try to do 2 events in less than 24 hours in 2 different cities and states, but I did both of them, and then we'll be back again next year. So it's always a great. We had Robert Kennedy Jr. Who spoke, and a lot of different great speakers, David Wolf, and different people who come in.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
learn.
Well, I'm sure that also living where you're living, because you're not amongst all the electronic chaos, because you're right by the water and the salt water. That's really got to help too with your energy levels and staying young.
Yeah, we're not. I feel like we're not able to stay here right now. But I wanted to film here because of construction. They're fixing both houses. Because lucky us, we were in the midst of a move when the hurricane hit, and it was our first. You have to wonder what's happening with the planet. It was the first direct hit here because we're not too far from NASA since I was told the late 1800s. So Hurricane Matthew was a direct hit, and they said if it had wobbled 10 miles in further, it could have, just completely. It would have been like New Orleans or far worse, they say. So that would have been scary. But and not that it wasn't already as a Category 3 direct hit on the beach, but yeah, and I haven't really. So we barely lived in the house. We've tried to move in, but there's always problems because we bought it just before the hurricane and fixed it up. Right. But yes, it is. We are near busy roads and whatnot, but just having this solitude on the beach when we get to enjoy it, and I plan on enjoying it much more once we're in here full time. Is very rewarding, and I even recommend for people if even if they're not in anywhere near a coastal area, because I grew up in the Midwest, that I think as rewarding can be if you're taking a walk in a forest or a park. It doesn't have to be an ocean, or if you have hiking, if you have hills where you are, which I love, which we don't have in Florida. So there are pros and cons, but yeah, definitely, even if somebody lives near a coastal area but not on it, to take that time and get to the beach to take a walk, or even get out and take a walk in your neighborhood, no matter where you are.
Right.
Really helpful.
And just having that knowledge of how that is helping you, energetically and spiritually, but then your own knowledge about, you've been written up in the press about the holistic doctor deaths that are out there. And can you explain what's been going on?
Sure. Yes. So back it's actually next week, or June 19th will be the 2-year anniversary of the first death in the series. And when I reported on it, I did not know, had no idea what was going to happen or what would happen. So I reported on Dr. Bradstreet's death only because I saw mainstream reporting on, like, saying Quack kills himself or takes his life in the river. And we now, with a family doing their own investigation and hiring investigators, we just did a show for Discovery Channel. We see that it's very unlikely that he took his own life, especially an MD of 30 plus years who he shot him. They say he allegedly shot himself in the chest. It would be very difficult standing in the middle of a river, and he would have other means if he really wanted to take his own life. So we do highly doubt the fact that he did that. So I reported on it only because mainstream was doing these such just slanted articles, and I wanted to write something less, that was unbiased, that just stated the facts of what we had, and that obviously immediately afterward we could not rule it as suicide. And then within a day or two, right here on the coast, we lost a 33-year-old holistic doctor, and then one who had just won a gold medal that day that had competed in a contest was in amazing, just impeccable shape, way better shape than I'm in. And he was one of the older ones in his 60s, but great shape. And I know some of his friends and loved ones, family, patients, loved ones, etc. And he died suddenly. So then it just kind of snowballed from there. And
Right.
and I had no idea that then it would be there would be so many doctors in such a short amount of time. And I think I probably got too caught up in it. Like I'll say, you watch the movies and they'll say you need to take yourself off the case. You got to take a week off, or take a vacation, or take yourself off of it. And because I did get way too emotionally involved talking with so many of the family members. But the good news is now, like with the case of Dr. Marshall, another doctor, fourth generation Marine in his 40s, perfect shape, had survival training, served 2 tours of duty in Afghanistan. They say he tripped or something and fell into this river when he was jogging. So I knew that was, Health Nut News was the first to report on that. And then now they're doing the Department of Health, Washington State Department of Health is doing an investigation into the medical examiner's office, the doctors who called it accidental, because we know now that it was a murder. It was homicide. So it was a very huge segue, or not want to say segue, but such a change to go from writing about organic blueberry pie or dairy-free organic recipes, or gluten-free recipes, to then writing about something so seriously on a site that had such a funny name. The more I think about it, but I tell people that Google is a funny name, and so Health Nut News might not. I was not ever planning on it being such a serious subject matter, but for me, doing the investigative journalism has been important, and we've definitely morphed a little bit.
Well, I appreciate it because, there's a lot of wellness people watching this, and that has been the one fear that with the clients that I've worked with, they're like, I can't say what I do. I'll get shut down. I'll have infiltrators after me. I can, and people that are really making a difference in people's lives, with things that they're helping them overcome that aren't mainstream or whatever. So if you could give any advice from what you found to the people that don't allow themselves to be fully self-expressed in their own passion because of fear of being found out, or somebody, big brother watching them or something like that. If you could just add to that whole.
Oh, definitely, Jasper. When I speak at these events, it's to holistic doctors, a lot of chiropractors especially, but I'm always saying, like I'm doing this event for the 3rd year in January, so it's always several thousand, especially practors, holistic medical doctors, some DOs, but I tell them that some of the highest profile ones seem to be the ones who have been the safest. So I would just, instead of living in fear, I think it's time when we see this, whether they're connected or not. I've always maintained that I have no idea, I have no evidence whether these deaths are connected. Obviously, some of the doctors knew each other, but maybe it's random or coincidental. But that now more than ever is the time for doctors or holistic practitioners to turn up the volume, literally turn it up, not live in fear, and to get out there and to be brave and to tell their story, or tell people what they do. Because I think the best way is instead, I'm sure pharmaceutical companies, whether that they're not involved whatsoever, they still don't want the holistic practitioners to speak up. They don't want. I have heads of Merck trolling my profiles, and so it's and I've called them out publicly, and they didn't like that. But they don't like, for whether it's a journalist or a scientist or a doctor, or some type of holistic practitioner to speak out, to be vocal. So I think now more than ever is a time that we have to do that, because they don't want us heard, because we're talking about a multi-billion-dollar industry that could be affected. And the good news is, the only good news, of course, of these tragic deaths, is that now their work is coming into light. Dr. Nick Gonzalez, a celebrity, Manhattan doctor, for Suzanne Summers' doctor, who's spoken publicly, Carol Alt, supermodel. He treated celebrities as well as everyday people who are had stage 4, like pancreatic cancer especially, and they're still in remission 20-something years later. It's only like a 2% survival rate. And his wife is a friend of mine, come to see me speak at some of these events. We become friends through all this, and sent me a book now that they had come out on his teachings, because his practices, because at least if they can't live on, at least their practices can, and that we keep that alive and kind of keep the message of the doctors alive.
Right.
And for doctors that are currently practicing that are holistic minded, I think, again, that this is the time that they get out there and not be afraid, be brave, and to speak their voice and not allow themselves to be silenced or live in fear. So it's kind of what I've done. So, and it's, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not probably at I don't know that they're at any risk. I mean, probably just, I don't have to have that stigma like some of them would, thinking, oh my gosh, because they can't take away my license or anything like that. So, but I think I know, as long as I know so many doctors that it's even make them become more brave, that they're going to speak out because they've lost their loved ones or their colleagues, and they're not going to give up.
That's good. So you do have a website that is just booming, but it's not booming by itself. It does take your power behind it. So with one of your secrets to success, how much time would you say you put into that?
I don't know if anyone's asked me that, but probably too much. And I'm seeking now to, like I said, delegate this out. I've had an assistant, not even a couple months, she's worked for me full time. And I didn't have, before that I had one who would help a little bit online virtually, but didn't even lived in California. So this assistant lives here locally. But before that, it's a little bit better now. I would say there were some times there, especially during the doctor deaths, because like I said, I probably admittedly became too involved and too caught up in it emotionally, where I was just morning, noon, and night, just working 7 days a week, and that was not healthy. And what I thought was, because I had the accident and had all the fractures, I broke my foot too. So that's why I appreciate walking, because when you break things and can't walk, then you learn real quick. Wow. So I thought, well, I'm laid up. I'm in slings. They want me to do surgery, which I did avoid, but so I did stem cells instead. But so I'm all propped up and can't walk. And so I thought, well, this is the perfect time that I'm going to work 10 times harder. But really what I needed to probably have taken a rest and let my body heal, which I'm doing now. So now it's a little more, it still gets to be a little hectic, but I seek to take some time off on the weekends when I can. This next week, Facebook is having their first live summit, or the first summit ever. So they have in Chicago. So I'm going to that, and it's a small group, and Mark Zuckerberg's going, and it's a shocking miracle. I was even invited through a friend. So I'm going to something like that, but usually would seek to take some time off on a weekend, and just like we all must do, and to give time to ourselves, because you got to put your own oxygen mask on first before you could help anybody else.
That's very true, very true. And so you're a passionate activist, as what you like to call yourself, about subjects that you write about. And what are your favorite subjects, though, when it comes to the things that you just love to write?
Well, I think more than some sites that may, I think what may set us apart, although I will do articles on, like I said, maybe because it's very, I think it's helpful, on leaky gut or different natural foods that can be helpful for different situations, or foods to avoid, or dietary things like that. Those are all interesting on natural health, but probably more the investigative stories, which I've covered a lot here in Florida, especially with the spraying for Zika. So we have this alleged Zika epidemic, although World Health Organization says it's not an epidemic. And I've learned so much, and then couldn't believe that some of the counties were contacting me and bullying me and saying, if this were Orlando Sentinel at Orlando, they just they change it and do what we tell them. And this is the heads of some of the county, and they didn't like that I was writing about them. So we have, in not just in Florida, but people don't realize California, Maryland, New York, in the boroughs in New York City, that they are spraying. They've sprayed, sometimes it's just BTI, but here and in other states, Southern California, where it's dry, and I lived there 8 years, never saw a mosquito, they're spraying Naled, which is also the name brand is Dibram. Coincidentally, it's morbid spelled backwards. And we found out that our governor here, his wife owns millions of stock in the mosquito spray. Shocker, I guess he can't technically own it himself. And to expose with the help of there was a nonprofit news organization out of Fort Lauderdale that brought that out. But then we were able to share that and organize a protest where CBS Evening News came there, and it was on, it was on mainstream, which was shocking to get that information out to the people. So I guess I prefer more the activist work as opposed to more the stories that may be helpful to people, which I still like to do, just about natural health, but definitely more on the front line of doing activist breaking stories, pretty much.
That's wonderful. So how do you handle the bullies?
How do I handle the
bullies, the people that come out and like, well, you can't write that, even though we do have, the First Amendment.
Well, with the county, I called him out in a video, and I don't think he really liked that. And then with the Merck, the Merck was one of the head. I mean, this is Merck Pharmaceuticals. They're huge. He was one of the higher ups at Merck, and I called him out with his LinkedIn profile in a YouTube video because on Easter Sunday, I thought, why aren't you, you show your pictures with your family. He used his real profile when he's kind of trolling on my page, but I just called him out, and I didn't swear or anything, but I said, it's Easter, it's a holiday, whether you celebrate it or not, spend some time with your family instead of trolling me. And he filed a notice with, I've not really told the story to anybody in an interview, but he filed a notice with YouTube and did a DMCA takedown notice, which is a digital millennium copyright notice that he tried to say, like, I couldn't show his LinkedIn profile, and I was harassing him when he was harassing me. And YouTube said, the video stays. She didn't do anything wrong, and it's still up. And I'm sure that he got in trouble at work, or whether Merck was involved, I don't know. But that's, where it used to be, Jasper, where when I was growing up and I was the skinny, tall, lanky kid, where I didn't stand up to the bullies, even girls, and they'd push me over, or I'd, be teased, or like on the playground, they might knock me over, and I didn't stand up for myself. Now I think this site has allowed me to have a voice and learn a lot from myself as well, that I'm not going to just sit down and take that, where I'm going to stand up and defend myself and defend my other readers too if they're being bullied. So we get trolls and all that, but that's not surprising. There's even a Cheryl Atkinson, who's what used to be a CBS news anchor, does a video, a TED Talk about astroturfing and how there are paid trolls. I mean, he's one of the heads of Merck. I don't think he was coincidental, or I don't know why he was trolling my page on Easter, but she does a great TED Talk about how there are paid trolls out there by pharmaceutical companies, and this is on TED Talk, that are just paid to come out and just try to kind of shut down the natural health sites. And even Facebook has the fake. Well, they've hired Snopes, which is, I've already had to call them out for failing to debunk me and falsely debunk my stories, because they can never get it right. But Snopes and other sites like that have become what they call the fake news, this whole new fake news thing. They are, where CNN calls them, where fake news dies. And they really want to shut down people telling the truth, whether it be on genetically modified foods or eating organic, or the sprays they're using, like for the Zika virus, which isn't an epidemic, and things like that. So yeah, it's tough when you do controversial work, but I just think it's important because there aren't enough people doing it. So.
Well, I agree, and there's a lot out there, but they feel silenced because they're afraid of being shut down, or the government suing them for something other than what they're really talking about. They'll try to find something else or do something malicious to them. So thank you for having a voice and speaking, your passion. So, but you're not worried about profit. You're not worried about anything like that, and which is great, which allows more abundance, I'm thinking, to come into your life, and then allows you to really shut down the noise of the things or the voices, and so that you can be fully self-expressed. So when it comes to running your website and not being so concerned about the money part, but running it from your heart, what has that done for you?
It's made a huge difference, because yes, I didn't really have a business model, and I figured that with some of the health sites, they would, back in the day, 20 years ago, like Mercola or something, that they would the first 3-4 years they didn't sell any products or anything like that. And I'm a big saver, and the old house, I jokingly say, had one bath. We shared a shower, and if we had guests, everybody shared a shower. This does have a couple bathrooms, but still is only a 2-bedroom. So, but I'm very frugal. We're probably both very frugal and a saver. And I knew that I could allow myself to take the time and not, I may do some Google ads or something, but I was basically bankrolling the site at the beginning. And, but really that allowed me to do what I want. I didn't have any advertisers telling me what to do, or anyone telling me what to do. And if I did ever carry a product, an actual product on the site, then yeah, I have to probably deal with the government, because so many sites, like my better half, he has been written warning letters, or the government will try to take him to court or whatnot. It's just kind of comes with the territory when you have drug manufacturers out there like Merck with their products that have killed, maybe, I don't know, tens or hundreds of thousands of people, like with some of the recalled products. So it's scary, but I think that it's been very empowering. It's been really empowering. I had never, my first time I got up on stage was like 3,000 people kind of in this arena, besides speaking to 60 people at a health retreat, and I'd never spoken to an audience at large. And it's the first time I was deathly afraid, and people were like, speak up, and that was probably just when I started the site 3.5 years ago, after having gone to all these events, but just sat in the audience quietly, a little meek, and now just finally it allowed me to have my voice, to learn to find my voice, really is what was it about, and then let it be heard and inspire others. Try and do my best and hopefully inspire some other people along the way.
That's good. And the one thing that no one knows about you, and that is that you really, speaking in front of thousands of people, doctors, and doing live videos in front of thousands of people, you're terrified of being on camera and on stage.
Well, the camera, yes. It's funny. I think I got over the big audiences, but this is the hardest thing doing this right now. And then I'm like, oh man, I got caught in the rain.
You look great.
I mean, it's downpour or thing. So yeah, it's hard for me. I do most of my videos on Facebook. I did one the other day with 75 or 76,000 watchers live.
Wow.
So huge. And I mean, that was the last one I did. I think if I look back at Facebook. And so I don't show myself on camera. I will hold so I'll hold the phone, and then I'll have that and show the different things on the screen. Or sometimes I'll do some, like you'll see on YouTube, where people share their screen and do videos like that. But I don't put myself on very often. But I'm doing my best to overcome that, because I think having more of a connection with the audience would involve probably being on camera too. That's my biggest thing, more than the big audiences of 3,000, especially doctors at the last two events. So you've got doctors who I understand know a lot of things I don't know, and it's a little intimidating. But I think most intimidating for some reason is the camera, and I'm not sure where that developed, but overcoming that, definitely. So.
Yeah, well, I love that, because my dad, he's a professional photographer and videographer, and his whole thing was, it doesn't bite.
Yeah, there you go. That's great. That's so awesome. Yeah, I like that line.
Yeah. So it's
probably
good,
been able to help you though with a lot of things, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think you look great on camera, and I'm really excited to have you a part of this. And so you also have a free gift that you're offering to everyone, because you are very generous in everything that you do. So please share with us what you're going to be offering.
Sure. The book is called In the Limelight, and it's just my healing journey, as I call it, whether it be not just Lyme disease, because a lot of people I know because of the title might think, oh, it's for Lyme, but really I feel that it can benefit anyone because of the information I would put in there, with whether they're struggling with any autoimmune health challenge whatsoever, weight gain maybe that they're working on and wanting to lose a little bit of weight, and or just change their body or lifestyle. And I'm going to be doing a few updates in it as well, because boom, suddenly it's like 3 years old. But I've probably, we've done a couple, but probably need a few more little updates in there. And and I give that away. And it's so many of you'll see the free ebook, and then it's like a PDF with 3 pages. I think this is about 50 pages, so it's not like a big long novel or anything, but it's definitely not just a couple of pages either. It's a good, a full-length short book, so which is nice.
Well, it's beautiful. I love downloading. I read a little bit of it, and I'm enjoying it very much.
Thanks.
So thank you for offering that, and also thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. Is there anything that you'd love to add that you feel you didn't talk about, that you'd love to add to our wellness practitioners nutritionists that are listening?
I would say the one thing, yes, because we have that whether if you're a wellness practitioner, so whether you're a wellness practitioner or whether you are maybe a patient or just someone in the world listening, whatever the case may be, that especially if you're a practitioner, I would say to the practitioners that and I'm sure many already know this, but for me, what I have always told my people, and sometimes helps for them to tell theirs, is that there's always light at the end of the tunnel, and that's when they may need to remember that themselves as well. But for their patients or their clients, whatever the case may be, that they always remember that there's light at the end of the tunnel, that there's always hope, and it can be hard sometimes to keep that in focus and know that you will get through this and the darkness will end and their light will emerge. But that would be my number one thing, to always do your best to be upbeat with your with the people you're helping and healing, that you always remind them that, and remind yourself too. And I remind myself every day, there's always light at the end of the tunnel. If you're going through this dark time, I think my secret that I have is like knowing the ceiling may be collapsing, rain might not stop, but it will be done. They'll get the mold out. They really will. They'll do it. They'll put a new roof on and we'll be in here. And it may seem like that's material, but on the other hand, you do like to have a roof over your head. So, I just always know, just look ahead. I mean, you got to live day to day too, but on some things that are, when you're really in some darkness going on, that know that there's always light. So, at the end.
And light will always eliminate darkness.
Yes, definitely.
And the sun will always come out after a hurricane.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, like the song, or Michael Frante's song, there's always a rainbow, like after the storm too, right?
Yeah, I love it. Oh, well, thank you so much. And I have to share one thing that I heard that you remind me of, and you are rain mixed with sunlight.
Oh, I love that. Thank
Isn't that
you.
wonderful?
Yeah,
So yeah, that's what my experience has been throughout this interview. So I really appreciate that so much.
Oh, thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. You're a great interviewer.